Have you been forgetting names you should know? Losing your train of thought mid-sentence? Finding that your mind just does not feel as sharp as it used to? Most people over 60 assume this is simply aging. They accept it, work around it, and quietly worry that something worse is coming. But here is what most people, and many doctors, do not realize. For millions of older adults, that mental fog, that slipping memory, that feeling that your brain is running on half power, it is not aging. It is a deficiency, a single vitamin that your body is quietly running low on and has been for years. And the most alarming part is this: you can have a perfectly normal blood test result and still be deficient enough to affect your brain. Today, I am going to explain exactly what this vitamin is, why people over 60 are especially vulnerable, what the latest research says about how it protects your memory, and this is the part that matters most: why the form most people buy at the pharmacy may not be working for them at all. Before we get to the research, here is something most people do not understand about how this vitamin works in your body. Vitamin B12 does not just sit in your blood doing nothing. It is essential for building and maintaining the protective coating around your nerve fibers, called the myelin sheath. Think of it as the plastic insulation around an electrical wire. When B12 is low, that insulation starts to break down. The electrical signals between your brain cells become slower, less precise, more prone to error. That is not a metaphor. That is the literal mechanism behind B12-related memory problems. Now here is the number that should concern every person over 60. According to the NIH and data from large population studies, approximately 20% of adults over the age of 60 have abnormal B12 biomarker levels, and the vast majority do not know it. When you include what researchers call subclinical deficiency, low enough to impair neurological function, but not low enough to trigger a clinical diagnosis, some studies put that figure significantly higher. One review found B12 deficiency in over 40% of elderly patients studied. And here is the critical detail: most of them had no obvious symptoms. Their memory was quietly declining, while their blood tests looked acceptable. So why does this happen so much more after 60? The answer lies in your stomach. Absorbing B12 from food is a complicated process. Your stomach needs to produce enough acid to release B12 from the proteins it is bound to in food. Then it needs to produce a special protein called intrinsic factor. Think of it as a dedicated taxi that carries B12 through your digestive system to where it can be absorbed. As you age, stomach acid production naturally declines. Intrinsic factor production declines. Inflammation in the stomach lining, very common in older adults, often from a bacteria called H. pylori, makes both problems worse. The result is that even if you eat plenty of B12-rich foods, your body may be absorbing a fraction of what it once did. This is not about diet. It is about absorption. Now let me tell you what the research actually shows about B12 and your brain. A landmark study by Vogiatsoglu and colleagues, published in the journal Neurology, found that low B12 status was directly associated with accelerated brain volume loss in elderly individuals without dementia. In plain terms, people with lower B12 had measurably faster brain shrinkage. A separate randomized controlled trial showed that B vitamin supplementation, including B12, slowed the rate of accelerated brain atrophy in older adults with mild cognitive impairment by a significant margin. And in a major finding published in Annals of Neurology just weeks ago, Researchers from UCSF found that cognitive impairment was linked to B12 levels that were technically within the normal range. People who were not deficient by standard definitions still showed slower cognitive processing and increased white matter damage in brain scans. The researchers concluded that the current recommended minimum levels of B12 may simply not be sufficient to protect the aging brain, and called for clinicians to consider supplementation even when standard blood tests look normal. The Framingham Heart Study, one of the most respected long-term research efforts in history, followed over 1,700 people for an average of nearly 18 years and found that higher cumulative B12 status was associated with significantly slower decline in memory, executive function, and language over time. Not dramatic reversal, not a cure, but a measurable, meaningful slowing of the cognitive decline that people dread most. Before I give you the practical guidance on what to do about this, let me say one thing. If you are finding this channel useful, the best thing you can do is tap the like button and subscribe. I spend real time going through the actual research so you get accurate information, not headlines, not hype. And 1 to 2 times a month, I break down the very latest science on a single nutrient, food, or habit. If that is the kind of honest health information you want, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it. Now here is the part that surprises most people, and it is the most important practical thing in this video. Not all B12 supplements work the same. Walk into any pharmacy and the B12 supplements on the shelf almost certainly contain a form called Cyanocobalamin. It is the cheapest, most stable form to manufacture. But here is the problem. Cyanocobalamin is a synthetic form. Your body cannot use it directly. It must first detach a small cyanide compound and then convert the B12 into the active forms your cells can actually use, primarily methylcobalamin. For younger people with healthy digestion and efficient metabolism, this conversion works reasonably well. But after 60, the same age-related changes that reduce B12 absorption also reduce the efficiency of this conversion process. Methylcobalamin is the form that does not require conversion. It is already in the biologically active state. Research reviewed in the journal Curious in 2025 confirmed that methylcobalamin appears more consistently effective and bioavailable, and may be preferable for individuals with impaired absorption or methylation pathways, which describes the majority of people over 60. For most adults in this age group, methylcobalamin 1,000 micrograms daily is the recommended starting point, according to clinical guidance. There is also a delivery method consideration. Because the absorption problem in older adults often happens in the gut, sublingual forms, tablets or drops that dissolve under the tongue, can bypass some of the digestive obstacles and deliver B12 more directly into the bloodstream. If you have been taking standard cyanocobalamin tablets for years and still feel foggy, this may be why. What about food sources? The best dietary sources of B12 are animal products. Beef liver contains far and away the most, followed by clams, salmon, eggs, and dairy. If you eat a varied diet, including these foods regularly, and your digestion is working well, food alone may be adequate when you are younger. But after 60, given what we know about declining absorption, most nutrition experts and the research support supplementation alongside a B12-rich diet rather than relying on food alone. Dorothy, a 69-year-old retired librarian from Vermont, had been struggling with what she described as a foggy head for 2 years. She assumed it was menopause aftermath, then stress, then simply getting older. Her doctor ran standard blood work, and her B12 came back at 220 picograms per milliliter, technically within the normal range but at the very low end. Her doctor, aware of the emerging research, recommended a trial of methylcobalamin in sublingual form. Within 3 months, she described a noticeable clearing. Not perfect, not like being 40 again, but sharper, more present, less like thinking through cotton wool. Her experience is not unique. Here is your action plan. Ask your doctor to test your B12 levels at your next appointment and ask specifically about homocysteine and methylmalonic acid as well, since these are more sensitive functional markers of B12 status than serum B12 alone. If your levels are on the lower end of normal or deficient, discuss supplementation with methylcobalamin rather than cyanocobalamin. And if you take a proton pump inhibitor for acid reflux or metformin for blood sugar, be aware that both medications are known to significantly reduce B12 absorption. This conversation with your doctor becomes even more important. One important note: B12 deficiency can cause neurological damage that, if left untreated long enough, becomes difficult to reverse. If you are experiencing significant memory problems, confusion, balance issues, or numbness and tingling in your hands or feet, these can all be signs of B12 deficiency, but they also have other serious causes. Please see your doctor rather than simply starting a supplement. Diagnosis matters here. If this video gave you something useful to bring to your next doctor appointment, please tap the like button and drop a comment below. Have you ever had your B12 tested? I read every single one. Disclaimer: this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult your doctor before starting any supplement, especially if you take medications or have existing health conditions. B12 deficiency has many possible causes and requires proper medical evaluation.